Hi everybody, thanks for taking the time to look at this presentation. This is on the Algo 8201 intercom door phone. As you can see from the pictures here, it is basically a stainless steel plate, plastic mounting, single button, speaker and microphone. The 8201 is a PoE powered wideband intercom door phone. Runs can use G711, G722 codecs. It is used for door entry applications in offices, classrooms, internal office communications, warehousing, anywhere where you just need a simple voice over IP intercom phone, which can actually control door locks. This is the unit you'd use, and it is outdoor rated. The 8201 is PoE powered. If you don't have PoE capability on your switches, you will need a PoE injector. It's a very compact little unit. You'll see the dimensions later on. It's two-way speech communication. It can actually be incorporated into the multicasting paging as well. If you've got an Algo paging solution, you can actually set up the 8201 to be part of that paging solution. We'll go through that in a little bit of detail later on. It has door opening control on board via a relay, so that the unit is a truly all-in-one unit. You can do the two-way intercom, and then if the phone who answers you dials a security code, which by default on this system is 6, it will actually open up the, will fire the relay, which is the dry contact relay, which will open up the door phone mechanism. The device registers as a third-party endpoint, SIP endpoint, to hosted or on-premise UC and Unified Communications environment. Effectively, what that means is that it's a SIP-compliant unit. It will connect to pretty much any other SIP-compliant server, IPPBX, cloud-based system, etc. It's all NAT compatible, so it can work behind the NAT. And so it doesn't matter if you've got a cloud, if you've got a local IPPBX or a dedicated building SIP server. As long as it is SIP compliant, it's not encrypted or anything like that, or not proprietary, the Algo 8201 will work on it without any issues. The 8201 can be set up in a number of ways, and we'll go through a little bit more in detail of it, but essentially it actually can work as a standalone unit. It can actually have its own onboard relay control and even sensor to detect if the door's opened or closed. But it can also integrate with the 8061, Algo 8061 controller unit. And the purpose for that would be that if you wanted a more secure environment, so that you've got the 8201 intercom unit by the door, but then to unlock the door, you want a separate controller unit for the relay. So if anyone breaks into the actual intercom phone themselves, they can't actually try and work out how to wire it and short it all up. Some building environments demand this, others not so much. So it's got the flexibility of setting it up any way you wish to do it. The other neat thing about this is it's very simple for a technician to install. Once it's actually plugged in to the network, or if it's not registered, e.g. the process is you literally plug it in, it fires up, powers up. After about 30 seconds it'll give an audible beep, and that's indicating I am ready, I'm working. And if you press the call button, if it's not registered, e.g. you haven't set up auto deployment or anything like that on it, auto provisioning, if it's not registered and you press that button, it's going to tell you what the IP address number is that it's sitting on. So there's no mucking around trying to find the IP address. It literally talks to you and tells you the IP address in the form of the IP address of this device is 192.168.1.115. And it keeps repeating that until you press the button to stop. Then you can simply go to the browser, browse in, and basically do any programming you wish. If we have a look at the rear of the unit, just wanted to point out a couple of things here for you. This here, that's where the PoE network cable goes into. So that's your network connection just sitting in there. Over here is your door control. It's your relay that controls the external lock mechanisms. So it's just dry contact. So you've got a normally open, normally closed. And it's got a door sensor there. So you could use that for indicating if the door is opened and or closed. Dimensions of the unit. As I said, very compact. Basically, the outer dimensions of the unit is 115 millimeters square. Okay, this is aluminium. This is a plastic. There's your microphone sitting in there. The depth of it is 34 millimeters of the insert that's going into the wall. If it's going into the wall, because this can actually be surface mounted and or flush mounted, and the the depth is very 34 millimeters, so it's a low footprint, low cavity footprint. Okay, and then it's just got the internal dimensions of the actual insert that's going into the wall. Here's two examples of how you can mount it. Now, pretty much everything comes all in one here. So this is your surface mount. You've got your surface mount gasket here. Put that against the wall. That stops any moisture and water getting in there. If you are going to mount it against a wall, just make sure you're not having a wall that's got running water down it. For example, if you've got like a brickwork in there and you've got like mortar cracks all going through here, this seal is not going to seal it. So you need to make sure that you don't want water running down against here. So just try to bear that in mind wherever you're putting it. You've got your surface mount bracket. You then have got your main assembly housing and the faceplate and literally cable plugs in. If you've got a door control, you've got two wires for the door control relays on it, and that's it done. For the flush mount, you basically need your flush mount brackets. So that is additional. Contact us for them. You've got your main housing assembly, and again the face plate, and it just mounts in flush. Quite simple to install. Most commonly done would be simply using its surface mount bracket. Specifications. It's 0.4 of a kg. Audio codecs are G711A, G7U, and G722. It's got service or redundancy for primary secondary. If your main voice server fails, the Algo 8201 will roll through to a secondary. So Linux-based operating system. It's got the details there of the processors. Relay output, normally opened or normally closed. Maximum rating 30 volts, 50 milliamp. Relay output, normally open or closed, what we talked about. You program it via the web interface, HTTP, etc., blah, blah, blah. And it can also be set up via the HTTP to head off to a auto-provisioning server, so that you can actually pre-configure these if you've got a lot of them going into a site, and they will auto-provision with all the programming and SIP registration. And the three types of provisioning there, have a nosy through that. NAT's done, etc. Runs by, so the unit will run quite happily behind the NAT, so you can use it on the cloud environment. It gives you environmental specifications, pretty much straightforward, not too hot, not too cold type scenario. Negative 40, positive 40 degrees from our perspective, and of course humidity up to 95%, non-condensing. Okay, pretty standard for most of the things, and we've got our compliance specs, etc. If we want to have a look at how we would set it up, just as the simplest way to do it, just to use it as a door phone and nothing else. Doesn't have to open up doors, or just as an intercom for someone to call and let them in, but with no lock control. You would simply plug it into your network via a PoE cable. That heads off to the server. You'd program it, and you could tell it to ring an extension or extensions in your building, depending on the IPv6 that you're dealing. Or it can be simply the same setup for a cloud environment. So there's no special requirements for the 8201 to work on a cloud and or a local SIP server. It simply works. Only additional thing I could put to this diagram if I wanted to have the door control options on it, I could have two wires coming out of the 8201 going to the door control side of things to via the dry contact relays just to trigger the door open. Or I can go for a little bit more complicated. Now, the previous example where we were talking about the door and using the onboard relay to control is probably great for a majority of the installations that are going in there. But some installations require a more secure control of the locking mechanism. Now, what we mean by that is that what they're worried about is that if I get a crowbar and attack this thing, tear open the unit and try and short the wiring for the relays, I could in theory open the door. By using the 8061 controller, which is this unit here, which is another Algo unit, standard off the shelf, we can have the 8201 trigger an unlock code, and it will go to the 8061, which will then fire a relay which is on board itself. Now, the purpose for that is, so if we look over here on the right, we've got our 8201 here directly connected to the network. It's not connected in any way to the lock mechanism. This is all the independent lock mechanism here. Here's your 8061, which is also an IP device, so it's connected to your network. And what that does is we call the person, they say, yeah, no problems, open up the door, but it doesn't open up anything on the phone. It basically triggers the relay in the 8061, and that's how the door opens. Quite smart. Okay, so that's all there is for the sales side of things. There is a sales and technical combined. The technical combined one goes into the web browser. If you'd like to have a look at that, feel free to have a look at the combination presentation. We've got this kind of combination, and we carry on going into the browser side. Apart from that, thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Okay, let's now have a look at the programming through the browser of this unit. First of all, before we go in to the browser, I just wanted to remind you, if we want to find the IP address of a device, all we have to do is, once we've plugged it into the PoE and it's fired up and the unit's actually running, because it's not registered, as soon as we press the call button, the speaker is going to start talking to us and tell us the IP address. Okay, so that's how you get the IP address. Okay, so now we're into the programming. So all we had to do here was enter our IP address that the 8201 gave us, and this is your main login page. Now, default tells you what the default password is, so we're just going to go in here and log in. Algo. I'm not going to save it, and here we go. So I'm going to give you a quick brief overview on how to program this up and then describe a few points in it. There is a full technical manual. Some aspects I won't be touching on, others I'll just go through and just give you a quick overview of what they do, and others will just actually get it working. So here's our main SIP page. So how to get it working. I've got a SIP server running on 192.168.1.60, I think it is, which it is. Extension we're going to use is 206. Authentication code 206, because this is just a very closed system and it gets defaulted every second day. 206 is the password, but you never saw that one coming. By the way, never do that in the field. Be very, my advice is you don't use the extension number for authentication ID. Use a name, number, combination of digits, etc. And the same with the password. There's lots of hackers out there trying to get into things. Just be secure is my advice. Extension to dial. So if somebody pushes the button, what I'm going to get it to do, I'm just going to tell it to dial 200. Okay, and I'm going to go save. Yeah, save the password, not to worry about that. So if I bounce back into my status, I can see that my registration is successful. Okay, and I'm an extension 206. So that's it. It's registered and basically set up to now make calls to extension 200 when they press the button, or auto answer, because by default that's what it does. So let's have a look at some of these basic settings here. We'll just go through them quickly for you. So we've got SIP registration, which we set up. If we look at the features, we can see that speaker volume's age. We can change that and apply whatever level we want. Automatic gain control is enabled. Inbound calls is auto answer, set to auto answer. The play answer tone, so it plays a tone before it answers, so that's enabled. Ringing limit basically is that it'll ring as long as you ring it with a SIP extension, but it can actually tell it to have a certain amount of rings if you so wish. Ringback tone enabled. Enable call button to end call, e.g. you press it to make a call, press it to end a call. And do we want G722 enabled? Enable maximum call duration if you so wish. Again, we're not going to do any of that. And sensor control, okay. Dry contact, so it's disabled. Dry contact closures, basically, so if the door's open or closed, it'll close onto the unit, and that'll be the door sensor, and that'll tell you what's opening and closing. We have a look at the door relays. Now, we can actually have the network controller. This is the 8086 controller unit. I've got to tell it what IP address it's on and what the password is. This is so that the unit can actually, the 8201 can actually control it. If you're not going to use it, don't enter it. Momentarily open code. So if I ring an internal extension, for example, I answer and I want to open up the door, it's been told to ring dial 6, opens it, but it can be a 1 to 4 digit code. Duration, it opens it up for 3 seconds by default. Open latch code, this is quite handy. These are codes that I can actually ring the door phone and then dial the code, and it'll actually open the latch, e.g. keep the lock open by using the relay, or closed, and then I can close it as well. So during business hours I could open and close it manually if I so wish. In a door environment, the door controllers will probably also set up a timetable themselves to do that. That's my experience with them in the past anyway. Tone lock tone is disabled. Local controller is local call is the door control. Okay, so that's just that. Let's set up to the multicast. Now, multicast. What on earth do you want multicast for on a door phone? Well, because it's an Algo, we can now also integrate with the Algo paging systems, e.g. the 8301 paging controller. We could use the 8180s if we've got an 8180 set up, and we can set up the zones. So we could actually, through using the paging, we could actually have the paging coming out the door phone. Quite neat, quite handy, and it's all there, and it's got master, slave, advanced, and expanded zones as well, if you so wish it. If you've got an 8301, have a look through the different presentations on site, and you'll see them. Okay. Additional features, push to talk. I'm not going to go into this, but it's to do with Polycom phones. If you're dealing with Polycom phones, it has Polycom push to talk compliance. More information in the manual on that one. Kick into advanced, we can set up our DHCP or static IP. We've got VLAN if you want to run on VLANs, and also the differential services for QoS, etc. The admin side, you can change the password, change the name of the device when it's broadcasted across the network, or you're looking for it using the Algo scan software. Introduction page, on or off. The web interface timeout, quite a long timeout by default, 1 hour, but we can shut it down to 5 minutes. Okay, so just lock that one. Got your log levels here, web interface protocols, etc., etc. Okay, I won't go into great detail of them. The time, well, we can set it up to be pretty much country Pacific and whatever you want it to be. I don't know, let's head back up here somewhere. Where are we going to be today? We could be in Australia and Hobart, for example. It's not a great issue. And or we can simply sync with the browser. Sync with the browser, now the time is set. Okay, but otherwise then you enter your NTP server, whichever you're going to use, and away you go. Provisioning, as I said earlier, these units can be set up via provisioning server. DHCP option 66 will set a static, download methods, etc. There's a separate document that goes into this detail. 90% of these are probably going to be deployed manually, but if you're a telco and you want to set these up so they're no-touch deployment, we can organize that with you. Just contact us. Different tones that you can have going when you call the phone. You can have a play with them later. We've got advanced IP using your outbound SIP proxy and your redundancy if you so wish it. Okay, so you click into there and you start getting into your different redundancies and all that kind of carry on. Advanced multicast, we sort of covered off already with the multicast, so we won't go too much into that. Let's click into the system. We can back up and restore. We can export the configuration, import the configuration. We can reboot and we can upload firmware, etc. Okay. We've got system log information. We can download to text and view. Credits basically is telling you a little bit about some of the functionality. It's going to be a bit slow bringing it up, but it will. There it is. It's going to tell you a bit that it's Linux and it's where it's using its different tones. So if you want to have a read, go for it. And then about tells you all about what version software you've got, hardware, etc. Okay, so that's pretty much the technical side.